Welcome to the Punk CX podcast. My name is Adrian. I'm an advisor, author, and general explorer of the service and experience space. My guests tend to have just released some interesting research. They run a company that has some interesting tech in the service and experience space. They are part of an organization that is doing some cool stuff, or they run their own business doing interesting things for both their customers and or their employees. That's enough from me. Let's get into the interview. Let me interrupt, sorry about that, to tell you a little bit more about this podcast because it's a two-parter. The first interview you will hear is with Tom Eggemeier, CEO at Zendesk. Tom and I talk about all the latest developments at Zendesk, what we heard in the keynotes at Zendesk Relate, and some of the big challenges currently facing brands. Next up, I speak to Adrian McDermott, who's the CTO at Zendesk, and Matthias, who's the CTO of EMEA at Zendesk, about some of the big product announcements that we heard at the event, what they mean, and how they will impact brands. Now, that might sound like a lot, but do take a listen, as there are some really good stuff in these interviews that I think you're going to like. So without further ado, let's get into the interview with Tom. I'm here with I'm here at Zendesk Relate in Las Vegas, and right now I'm talking to Tom Eggemeier, CEO of Zendesk. Hi, Tom. How are you doing?
Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. So this is a Punk CX podcast, but I wanted to start by saying, I remember talking to Mikhail Sveinen in London back in 2012 on this very podcast about how Zendesk was leading a customer service revolution back then. And when I was listening to your keynote this morning, I was like, ooh, there's echoes of the past there. And because a big part of your keynote today was about, you were talking about this resolution revolution. And I wondered if you could tell me about that and what's the thinking behind it.
So first, I'd just like to say, Mikkel and his fellow co-founders did just a fantastic job ushering in a first Zendesk revolution about customer service. They democratized customer service through hundreds of thousands of customers around the world. They made it simple, easy to use. And I really think they not only helped companies, but their employees, businesses they served, and consumers. And so when people don't have the history, we don't talk about this, but you have the history and some of your listeners have the history. We're really looking at this the second revolution for Zendesk. And not many companies get a chance to have a second revolution. A lot of companies that reinvent an industry get stale and stagnant and don't think ambitious enough. And so we're hoping to be one of the rare companies that reinvent customer service for a second time.
Your own S-curve.
Exactly, the S-curve. And what we launched today was our resolution platform. It is great that when companies talk about seats or interactions, okay? But honestly, companies and consumers and businesses and employees don't care about seats. They don't care about interactions. In customer service, they care about, did you solve my problem in a timely, efficient, positive way? And maybe even did you delight me with a great customer experience along the way?
That's sometimes even the minimum, solve my problem, is delightful.
For me, I'll be honest, I know some people, say, like Apple, we want to delight our customers. Usually, I just want to have my problem solved quickly, efficiently, and timely. If you do that, I am so happy.
I'm sold, I'm yours,
exactly.
I'm coming back. And I think that's absolutely right. I mean, it is that I've always said, you'd be brilliant at the basics. And sometimes the basics is just solve that problem. And it's always been that idea that if you think about relationships, solving somebody's problem, being brilliant at that basics, is the foundation of trust, credibility, all of that sort of stuff, and people keep coming back. But sometimes being brilliant at the basics is sometimes not as sexy as other people would kind of have as other things. There's no shiny objects, flashing lights. And it takes work and time and commitment and resilience and all those sort of things. So I love the fact that you're zoning in on that. But then you also made a lot of announcements today. I mean, underneath the resolution platform, there's a lot of announcements, many of which are agentic in nature. And that's going to drive this shift from where we were around, categorizing, using generative AI to categorize tickets, automate responses, do all these different things, into actually being agentic in nature and solving some problems, taking some actions. I don't want you to go through the full list because we'll be here all day. But give me the highlights of the announcements and things.
Yeah, I'm really pleased, first of all the agentic AI, which is the buzzword, of the day, but I really buy into that it's going to be more autonomous,
Yep.
based on large language models, reasoning engines, AI agents solving customers' problems. Hopefully, maybe next stage is before they even know they're going to have a problem. But we made a lot of announcements this week. Everything from our next generation AI agent that's really built. I think the big differentiation for us is that there's a kind of if you think of it's hard on the podcast, but think of a slider, a scale between agency and control.
Right.
And I think we are the best in the business giving our customers the ability to decide how much, I don't say agency or creativity on one side, on how much control. If you're in an industry that's regulated in the UK or Europe, you're going to want a little more control than just put a large language model that's been post-trained out there in the wild. And on the other hand, if you're a creative company, and you might go more towards the agency, the creative side. And so that was one of the things that our next generation of AI agents that we launched. Another thing that might seem small, but I think is really important, we have over 30,000 customers with a help center and knowledge base. And so if you think about that, again, Mikkel revolutionized help centers 17, 18 years ago, but it was a bunch of articles with like blue links, and you get 10. As a consumer, it's like, which one do I go through? I got to read it. We just put what we call our Ultimate GPT or UGPT into a generative search into a help center, so that instead of, if you search for something, instead of getting 10 articles, it's going to pinpoint the answer for you for a company's customer or employee. That's another thing, and that's free, by the way. We're just upgrading.
Yep.
Another thing that I'm going to say, we're going to work on our help center so that we're going to go analyze, and this is why the resolution platform is important. We're going to analyze all your tickets, all your voice data, and say, you're having these 7 kind of issues. We've created 7 articles for you in your knowledge center. Would you like to edit them? Would you like to accept it? Would you like to reject it because we got it wrong? But it's going to go more from reactive to proactive. Yeah. And I think that's the promise of agentic AI. And that's why our platform is important, because you've got to combine what your AI agents are doing, human agents are doing, workforce management, quality assurance, all these buzzwords, and you got to make it an integrated platform that's giving insights so you can proactively solve problems.
Which is brilliant, because it's something I remember talking to Adrian McDermott about. He talked about the knowledge graph, and you're talking about the knowledge builder and all those sort of things. And when I talked to him about that, I think it was probably a couple of years ago, and he told me that, I was like, well, that's brilliant, because then you can think about it proactively identifies gaps and you start filling in the gaps. But if you actually can use this generative AI, agentic technology to be able actually to fill in the gaps, and then if you like scale it across languages and so on and so forth, is that can make a huge difference. But I also think it also gets to the kind of point where when you're building out that knowledge, you're building out the foundation for all of the other agents and bots and all those different things. Because somebody said to me once, or recently, said, data is AI and AI is data. And I'm like, yeah, that's as simple as
the simple things like cleansing your data are actually so important, and it's overlooked. But it's kind of your point about getting back to the basics. Sometimes having data that scores interactions. For instance, we have 18 billion interactions where people basically give a thumbs up or thumbs down. It's it's anonymized, and being able to use that data to post-train LLMs to get even more and more accurate is just fantastic. But we spent a lot of time scrubbing that data, for instance, to make it really useful and actionable, because we think real data, real customer service data is still better than synthetic data.
Oh, no, completely. I mean, and I think what's really exciting as well is the idea that you've been able to access all the historical ticket information. There's so much. I mean, think about 5-10 years ago, like how much insight and knowledge sits in an inbox somewhere, or is filed away in folders. If you think about it, scale that across an enterprise, it's like mind-boggling.
Yeah, I was with a customer in the East Coast of the U.S. in Boston recently, and they have a number of private jet brands, and I'll keep them anonymized, so I don't know if they'd want it out there. But what they think is you're going to go from this reactive, because they have all this data on customers. This customer likes to go to, I'll use more of a European example, the UEFA, the Champions League, on a consistent basis, and they usually fly from London to wherever the stadium is. Maybe they like an English breakfast, they like to stay at this kind of hotel, they expect this kind of transportation, and they're like, Right now, it's all reactive on how we handle that. But could we go say, hey, you love the Champions League. Would you like to go to the Europa League as well this year? We already have a plane ready for you. We have your English breakfast. We know this is the transportation and this is the hotel. And so we really see the customer service might be kind of going on its head in the next years, where it's going from more reactive to proactive, and the lines between service and sales are probably going to blur.
Oh, 100%. And I think the thing that I would say is that I've always advocated for the idea that service support or contact center is the richest, most underexploited data source, database, insight engine that exists in any enterprise, any business. But I was also going to ask is that you've also announced a couple of other things. We'd like going not just about external service, but you're like going, wow, we're going to do internal stuff as well. So there's a CX and EX. We're going to take all this stuff that we've learned here and apply it to internal, both in HR, but then into ITSM, and then into down the road into asset management and stuff as well. And it feels like to me that this is like a service OS that you're creating.
Exactly. I think, again, Zendesk has done a great job of having a horizontal platform. And that horizontal platform actually serves about 17,000 customers right now from an employee service perspective, and then 136 countries around the world. For your audience in Europe, some of the places that we have, some of the companies we have are like Tesco. For instance, their 400,000 employees use Zendesk for employee service because only, I think, 10,000 of their employees have an email address, for instance. Right. So they work with us. So what we've done is we still have the resolution platform for the base for both, but we're building customer service specific things, which we've always done on top of it. But now we're adding things like a service catalog, HRS integrations. It's going to be more, instead of talking if you're someone logging in, it's not about you as a customer, it's you as an employee. Yeah. And so more pre-built templates, things like that. And yes, we're going to be going into IT asset management from HR and legal and other things like that. And so the foundation that Mikkel and others built was just a fantastic, easy to use, easy to install, easy to get value from platform. And we think we've reached the stage where we can get a little more specific. This is based on what customers have asked us for. Yeah. And we're launching that from an employee service perspective and share.
Awesome. I mean, then one of the other things that stood out on the keynotes was that you announced, this is what you said. I quote. I wrote it down. It says, "We are aligning our financial success with your service success." And I thought, there's a mic drop moment. I was like, because it's outcome-based pricing or resolution-based pricing. And I was thinking, well, that's big. You sort of glide past it, but it's like in many of the pricing model variations that are in this sort of space right now, that's a big call. That's kind of cool. What's the thinking behind that?
Yes, I think this is one of the great things about being a private company versus a public company when there's massive changes going on in industry, because we're focused more on how we can go delight our customers and really get aligned with them. And we think that's going to be benefit for our employees and our shareholders ultimately, but we don't have to worry about chasing a quarter or a month or something. So what we announced 3 or 4 months ago, automated resolution pricing on our AI agents. And so some companies are charging $2 for an interaction. And I gave an example where I had a pretty frustrating experience with an AI agent that didn't resolve my problem. It actually exacerbated the problem. And then it went to a human agent who had no context to what I just went to the AI agent about. And I was in my mind, the company got charged $2 more because I had this AI agent interaction experience. So what we're doing is we're only going to charge our customers if they use our AI agent if we resolve the problem, okay? How do we go analyze that is one of the questions people ask, and we take a large language model, analyze it. We have our quality assurance that is more traditional AI, machine learning, we analyze it. Then we take all those samples and we do a manual subset with the customer and say, do we really resolve the problem? And we're very, very accurate on solving the problem. And so whether we do or not, and sometimes we don't solve the problem with an AI agent. And so we think that aligns to our customers that we only get paid for our AI agent if we solve our customer's customer problem. We also announced that we're headed towards flexible pricing, where I think one of the things holding people back for investing in either human agents or AI agents is they don't know what the mix is going to be in 6, 12, 18, or 24 months. Right. And so we've got a system where people can go trade between human agents and AI agents are licensing between automated resolutions and right now seats, so that they're invested, protected, and they can go scale up or down, more human agents, more agents.
Budget, and then kind of change the levels.
Exactly. Similar budget. And where we're moving, quite frankly, is towards human resolutions as well, and away from seats. We're piloting this right now with about 20 or 30 of our customers in the globe. And the idea would be that you would have a bucket of resolutions. Quite frankly, human resolutions are going to be priced less than AI agent resolutions because you have the human labor attached to that. And I think we want the incentives similar for our customers. Our customers rather generally have an AI agent solve the problem if they do it with good customer satisfaction, because it's less costly, it's usually quicker, and it's actually, we see on certain kind of resolutions better customer satisfaction. And so you would have a bucket of resolutions from Zendesk. You'd have flexibility between human and automated resolutions, and that we think is aligning our business model to our customers, the company's business model better.
Awesome. I mean, I thought it was, I just sort of wanted to explore that a little bit with you, because you said it and then it kind of moved on, and I was a bit like, wait, hang on.
No, you caught it, and there's so many announcements today that I think that's what really excites me, that delivering value to our customers. But I think business model where you're charging seats, customers don't think about seats, and they do now, but that's some of the software industry created. Customers don't think about interactions. They think about, did you resolve my customer's problem? Or like we talked about at the beginning of the podcast, ideally, did you delight them? But did you resolve? And that's all that matters.
Yeah, absolutely. So the one final thing before I wanted to ask you to maybe shine the spotlight on some of the brands that you've kind of worked with and some of their stories, a couple of their stories. But you talked about changing business models, but you also referred to the acquisition, obviously to be finalized, of Local Measure, and how they are a CCaaS kind of player, built primarily on AWS, but a CCaaS kind of player. And I've seen that before, and then you were talking about intent on the amalgamated sort of the fusion of Local Measure and Zendesk. You're intent on becoming an UNCAS kind of player, in contrast to many of the clunky CCaaS players out there. And I was a bit like, okay, come on, roll up the sleeves.
We got to be provocative and have a point of view every once in a while.
And I was like, go on then, help me understand that.
So I think it's what's happened is a lot of the CCaaS players, they built their architectures in 2014 and 2010.
Okay.
A lot of them started with premise-based code that they ported over to a single tenant system that ultimately became multi-tenant. The fortunate ones were on a multi-tenant system, but very few, if any, were built on like an agentic AI resolution platform basis. Local Measure has just been in the CCaaS business for a couple of years. They are an application on top of AWS Connect. And we think they've been built for this, agentic AI world. And so one of our values at Zendesk is trying to democratize AI for everyone. Like we have 100,000 customers and a lot of small, medium, or enterprise businesses, but they might not have an army of 20,000 engineers or data scientists. And so we think one of our missions is absolutely, we want to provide exceptional service power exceptional service for every person on the planet. One of the ways to do that is talk to a lot of different companies and work with a lot of companies. We've heard more and more loud and clear from our companies that they don't want their traditional CCaaS, kind of old architecture. They want an agentic AI architecture that's plugged into an AI agent, whether that's a voice AI agent or whether that's an AI agent that's doing email and chat and messaging, et cetera. They want it really integrated with workflows and ticketing in their help center. They want to integrate it with all their channels. And they want to leverage things like Copilot, like that's native into that, platform. And so we believe we've acquired over the past couple of years workforce management, quality assurance, AI agents, AI Copilot, and now Local Measure, pending regulatory approval. So we have a definitive agreement. And as long as we get regulatory approval, we think we have an end-to-end platform. Right now, we do with our Talk business, which is built on Twilio that we're really happy with, but that's more for our digital and small customers. Local Measure is going to be more for our mid-market enterprise. We think we have an end-to-end platform that's agentic AI-based, that's focused on resolutions, that's best in class.
Awesome. I mean, I hopefully that's going to ruffle a few feathers in the CCaaS space. But I know that on is just to finish up and say, you've also told a whole bunch of stories about how some of the brilliant brands that you're working with and how they're using some of these AI sort of driven tools to stand out in their own fields. And I wondered if you can maybe share with me a couple of examples of ones that you want to shine the spotlight on and tell me about what they're doing and how they're benefiting and so on and so forth. Just because all of this stuff is fine, but then it's a case of like, well, what happens when the rubber hits the road sort of thing? And it brings it to life for people. And it gives people, oh, they're doing that. I can go look them up and I can test them out.
Sure. One of the things I also would tell your podcast listeners is that results vary. It really depends on the use cases. It depends on your knowledge base. It depends on what kind of interactions people are coming to you with. And so when I hear other vendors say, oh, we'll automate 80 or 90% without going to that level of detail, I'm always highly skeptical. So I give like really wide ranges to customers. Like, I think we can automate between 20 and 80%. And if you give us a couple of days to go analyze your data, I can get within 10% of what we can go automate. But that's a huge range, but it's a huge range because customers are at different stages of maturity.
Yeah.
So a couple. One is Etsy, where they launched our advanced AI agent about 6 months ago.
Okay.
And we're between 30 and 40% now automated resolutions for the interactions they're having with their customers. And that has freed up their customer service human agents to go spend more and more time with their members, their customers, et cetera. Another pause just to give a break. Another great example is Catapult Sports. They work with high performing athletes all over the world.
I saw them in the keynote. They were like they wear the analytics, the vest with the analytics.
The vest with the analytics. They have an amazing CSAT score, and so when you introduce automation, you're always worried that are we gonna they're almost the best CSAT scores in the world.
Don't mess it up.
Don't mess it up, exactly. And we've been able to automate a ton of interactions for them while keeping their CSAT score up like 1%. And again, when you're best in class, 1%'s been really, really good. Another one is Dutch Bros on the employee service side. They were a key. There's a for your audience. They are a coffee company in the U.S. and we work with them on an employee service. And employee services, we've been able to automate a ton of onboarding, HR onboarding, legal compliance, a bunch of interactions for them that have increased their employee service satisfaction.
Awesome, great brands, great avenues for some of our listeners to go and investigate, and some great results. Also, kind of really diverse, not some of the usual ones as well.
Yeah, we try to. And by the way, it's really interesting in the AI world. I think Europe is in a lot of ways pushing privacy, data governance, and other things that are really key for AI in a way that's not happening in the U.S. And so it's interesting for your listeners. We've got some of our biggest AI centers in Europe, actually, in Portugal, Lisbon, Portugal, in Berlin, Germany, in Tallinn, Estonia, and it's seeing both sides of the Atlantic. It's interesting what's important for different consumers, and I think it's a really. I think Europe is doing a much better job than people perceive on AI talent, and then thinking some of these data and governance and privacy issues that I think are just going to be crucial for the next 5 to 10 years.
I think that's absolutely true. I mean, I think I think for me, it's like a lot of people are sitting around waiting for legislation to happen to tell them which way to go. Like, no, the best companies are figuring it out and going their own way and sort of finding their own path around what's the right thing for both them and also for their customers. Can't wait for
Totally agree.
Anything else you want to highlight or add before we wrap things up?
Thank you for having me on the podcast.
You're very welcome. Thank you, Tom. I hope you liked my interview with Tom. Let's get into the chat I had with Adrian and Matthias about the latest product announcements and what they mean. So I'm here for part 2 of a series of podcast interviews I'm doing at Zendesk Relate in Las Vegas. And right now I am with coffee in hand, first thing in the morning, talking to Adrian McDermott, CTO of Zendesk, and Matthias. I'm going to try and get this right, Guler.
Yes, very good.
Thank you. CTO Eggemeier of Zendesk. Welcome back, Adrian, to the podcast, and welcome, Matthias, to the Punk CX podcast for the first time. How are you both doing this morning?
Great, inspired, tired.
Oh, he rhymes too. He's a poet.
Nothing to add.
So I thought maybe to start with, then, for the sake of our audience, and because this is only an audio-only recording, Could I ask you both to introduce yourself, tell me a little bit about you and the sort of just your background and the work that you do in your role in Zendesk. I'll start with you, Adrian, first.
So, hi, Adrian. I'm Adrian.
That's totally weird.
I'm Adrian McDermott, the CTO of Zendesk. That is something I have done for almost 15 years. I am a technologist and a computer scientist and a Yorkshireman living in San Francisco.
Perfect. Matthias?
Yeah, hello, Matthias. I'm the CTO for the EMEA region at Zendesk, joined about 3 years ago, and live in Germany. So,
Very well.
overseeing the EMEA region.
Fantastic. Now, where I wanted to start was just a bit of almost like background and context. I mean, I was talking to Tom yesterday, and I was telling him that I remember talking to Mikhail Svein back in 2012 in London when they were sort of busting out of Denmark and taking over Europe, and then had plans for world domination. And on the podcast, and we talked about how Zendesk was leading this customer service revolution back then. And I just thought that was really interesting because the lead headline at the event at Relate was, we're talking about another revolution, but it's a resolution revolution. And I wanted just to get your perspectives. I talked to Tom about it yesterday, but I want to get your perspective on sort of the role that Zendesk and its technology and its approach is taking in that sort of revolution, or playing in that revolution. Who wants to go first, gentlemen?
I always want to go first. Unless it's like an awkward question. And then Matthias.
Anything to add? No, I'm fine.
So I love that you have that historical context and think about what we were trying to do before and what we're trying to do now. In my mind and my experience, one of the superpowers of Zendesk and one of the sort of driving forces of our mission, product and company philosophy has been this idea that we can democratize, at this point for 100,000 customers, the best and most innovative technology that people are applying. And I think the best practices that we see that people are applying in customer service and CX.
Yeah.
And so back in the day, the 2008, 2007 version of Zendesk, it shipped with 8 triggers and an automation that explained to those early users. And when I started, there were 5,000 customers and no salespeople, right? And those early users out of the box got a system that had a dial tone that came on that worked. And it showed you how to do email support, right? And I've always loved the idea of democratization. And as I, led product for a decade, it was a philosophy that I imprinted on every new product manager and every new engineer. Fast forward to today. I think there's a lot of interest and excitement around the possibilities that come forth from generative AI. But I think there's also a lot of nervousness because people are like, what is your AI strategy, right? And I worry a little bit that one has to have a strategy about a particular technology or API. What one should always have is a business strategy about driving the business or customer experience in particular and customer service. And so what we're trying to do with the resolution revolution is A, create something that's incredibly hard to say. B,
Don't try and say it when you're drunk.
I was talking to Tom actually, and he said, we don't actually say it in the keynote that we have at the Relate conference. It's only in the video. And I'm like, does that tell you something about the naming? Anyway, we digress. But I think what we're doing there is focusing back on what's the outcome you're trying to get to. Yeah. The outcome you're trying to get to is resolving customer inquiries more efficiently, better, and in a way that is kind of hopefully more delightful for the user who chooses to take that route. What are we doing here? We're democratizing the understanding and codifying the 5 or 6 pieces that go in the box to create an experience that works like that. And I think so, in my mind, you could draw a line back to Mikkel, Morten, and Alex and the things that they were doing back then and that they continue to do at Zendesk for over a decade, which was creating the right experience for our users and having them not have to worry too much about the technology du jour or the method of serving people du jour.
Yeah. I think it's a bit of a mic drop thing there. Matthias, you want to add anything to that?
Well, For me, for me, is obviously lots of things have changed, right?
Yeah.
Channel usage, for example, has changed. But the fundamental expectation in my mind from customers hasn't. It's probably the same for my parents than it is for me, than it will be for my kids, is I have a question, I have a concern, I have a complaint, and I want that answered, and I want that solved fast in the first go in a very convenient way. And that to me is what a resolution is all about.
Yeah.
That we can do this at scale for all of our customers.
I think that what's really interesting where you're talking there makes me think about actually it is about the outcome, right? It is about the problem. And the problem is a very age-old problem. It's that humans kind of like have. They're like, we just don't like problems. And we like quick fixes. And if we can't fix ourselves, we need to speak to somebody, we would like that to be quick and easy and effective and efficient kind of way to fix something.
That's also absolutely right. And I think this is also a super important aspect when you think about a customer journey. I believe this is a critical moment in a customer journey. I have an issue. Things might happen. That's okay. But now, how is the company interacting with me?
Yeah.
Is it actually providing a solution for me, as I said, fast and convenient? And if it does, it will have a very positive impact on my customer loyalty and my willingness to kind of also recommend and speak positively. If it doesn't, we know from all of our reports and all of the statistics that I'm probably very likely to leave, even after one or two bad experiences, and go to the competition. So I think it's a very important topic.
If you want to go really nerdy on this sort of stuff, I will quote some psychological neuroscientific research at you about why this stuff is important, if you like. And because what I found in just my ramblings, wanderings around this sort of space is that we associate problems with risk, uncertainty, disappointment, failure. And that speaks to our survival instinct. And we see it as a threat. But actually, neuroscience has shown that we value the avoidance of disappointment, risk, and failure between 5 and 12 times more than any surprise and delight initiative. And it's all to do with rumination. Because the stuff that we associate with being a threat or a risk just stays with us for longer because we think about the what if side of things rather than going, oh, that was nice. We don't think about the what if about, oh, something was nice, but we do think about the what if something breaks or we've had a problem. And that's why it sticks with us, because it's all to do with our survival instinct. And so the payoff about getting it right is just massive. But the problem is many people don't really focus on solving those things or put enough effort into solving those things really easily rather than they do the surprise and delight. And that's why sometimes the returns can be a bit unbalanced. Anyway, that's me going a bit nerdy on that sort of like stuff. So with the emergence of all this sort of stuff, because you announced a whole raft of different things, which was brilliant and also mind-boggling at the same time. It's taken a while to sort of settle all.
Is raft the collective noun for announcements?
Oh, raft? Oh.
We shouldn't digress again.
No, I mean, there's a collective noun announcement, a raft of announcements. I've seen that in PR releases, kind of like, I'm not sure. Maybe there is probably a collective agreement about raft. But anyway, you talked about many of which were about agentic AI, and as you level up the application of generative AI and try and knit it all together, how is that going to fundamentally change customer service and customer experience? I mean, what are we looking at? What is the prospects for customers and employees? Because it feels like there's all the announcements. It's a step up, but is that going to be a step on for customers and employees? How's that going to work? I'm going to come to Matthias first because Adrian's looking at. Well, I'm going to be first out the blocks on this one. You're leaning forward too.
There's also so many different aspects that I think it's okay. We will both have an opportunity to talk about.
He's looking disappointed now.
So perhaps let's start with the first one.
Yeah.
And the first one, when we think about it, is how can we help our customers to achieve up to 80% automation in in serving their customers and the end consumers and their customers. And that is very important for a number of reasons, right? When you think about, first and foremost, like the industry spends about 600 billion on CX, out of which about 500 is on labor cost. You think about how difficult it is to get people, good people, how much it takes to upskill them until they get really productive. And then on the other hand, when you think about interaction volume, and when we look at our customer base of 100,000 customers, we saw interaction volume increase 3x over the last couple of years, and we actually expect this to continue. You soon understand that automation is actually a good thing. It can actually help you in an increased volume to kind of deliver good and consistent service to your customers. And with that, obviously, comes the challenge, well, how do you actually do this? Right? And this is where I think the third generation of AI agents, which we announced yesterday, will significantly help, because now you have a system where the system is much better able to understand intents and requirements from customers, even, and we have all seen this, even if I might have multiple in one, right? And this is where current technology comes a little bit to, has some challenges. If I change my opinion, if I have another ask, if I want to jump around, this is where the new generation will be much better suited to really guide me through a process and kind of, work one after the other and make sure that I actually get whatever I needed. So that we can come and we can help our customers to achieve that goal of 80% automation.
Okay. Adrian?
Maybe I'll nerd out because you nerded out, and that's something Adrians do. I think it's important to establish the meaning of terms, right? And this is something I've been having a conversation with folks about. Agentic is it's a popular word at the moment. It's a meme. But when I go back to first principles on large language models, right, they are token predictors of the next word. What are the advantages that come from the emergent properties of the scaling laws, right? What we see is they do three things really well, right? They've read the entire internet and much more knowledge beyond it. They've memorized all of it, and so that world's knowledge is just incredibly useful. It turns out, when speaking to a user, to begin discerning and understanding of what it is they want, as Matthias says, what their intent is, what they're trying to do. Second thing that they do is create really well, right? They can create any kind of content that you want, image, video, text, in a certain style, in a certain way. There's that you put a prompt into an LLM, you are a customer service agent for Zendesk. You are answering users' inquiries about the plan levels, gold, medium, bronze, whatever it is, in the product, right? And it takes those instructions and takes them to heart and does an incredible job of it. First two skills, right? World knowledge, ability to create. The third skill is the ability to reason and plan, right? And people talk about chain of thought reasoning and these other things. I've really I sort of, to educate myself in some ways, went quite deep with the data science team that's building out what we call third generation bot. First generation is, following rules. Second generation has some natural language processing, but you're still following a flowchart. Third generation will get to the point of resolution because it can reason and make its own plan and continue to go. So if Matthias asks me something, we could do that. And so the way our third generation AI agents are architected, you describe the 20, 30, 50 things that one can do in a customer service instance for a given company. And you give them a name and a description, and then we hand those to an AI agent with a bunch of, proprietary prompting. And we say, okay, Matthias is going to come online and start chatting to you. Figure out which of these 50 things he wants to do. And if it's not one of these 50, we'll hand it off to a human and they can have a conversation with Matthias. And I think what really stands out for me from an agentic point of view is this idea that it's goal seeking and planning and adapting. There is no beginning, middle, and end in the narrative of the conversation. There is just a flow that it reacts to constantly in the way that a human would, right? You put a customer service agent down, they know hopefully standard operating procedure for a set of intents. They know how to record the disposition codes and blah, blah, blah. They're going to sit there and they have agency then to figure out what it is Matthias wants and does it. Getting an agent to do that is an AI agent to do that is incredibly powerful. You can also get them for a given intent then to go through the processes and the steps and get it done. Different from following a flowchart, and the flowcharts are just not as flexible. They have a beginning, a middle, and an end, and they have steps that they have to go through. And so, it's the difference between Siri, turn on the lights, saying that 4 times in 4 different ways until the lamp comes on, or not, as the case may be, and, a really sophisticated bot that you can talk to. So I'm excited from a customer service point of view to see what we do with the capacity that we can free up, right? No one in our customer base is saying to themselves or saying to us, you know what? I have enough customer service. I don't really need any more. I'm good. People are saying that. And so we're handing back the ability to then reimagine how you could connect, the amount that you can connect, right?
I think there was an interesting thing. There's 2 things that somebody said. Well, somebody said to me on another podcast a while ago, and they said, what's fascinating? Some of this technology has actually helped them turn on the phones because they've never been able to sort of afford to do that before. So they're a bit like, actually, we can automate all this sort of stuff. It frees up a whole bunch of space. We can turn on the phones and we can speak to people because we really want to speak to people. And that's a conscious decision that they're like, well, we're stepping forward. We're leaning into this. We want to create that connection. It's a bit like what Trevor Noah was talking about yesterday, because there was a couple of moments he said, well, he quoted Jensen Huang from NVIDIA. And it's just like, any company who talks about using this technology to get rid of people is a company that's run out of ideas. Yeah. And I always thought, bingo, thank you. So I like the I love the idea because it's about possibility and harnessing and combining kind of the skills and the capabilities of both the merging and evolving technology with the human touch, as it were. But I guess my question from all of that is, we're here in the US. It's Las Vegas, and are you seeing also any differences across countries and geographies and markets and things around the maturity, understanding, adoption, challenges, all these different things? Matthias, maybe this is a thing for you, perhaps, because you're coming from Europe, and Europe is... People think Europe, it's all the same. You're like, no, it's about 20, 30 different countries and they're all different. I mean, what are you seeing in terms of the differences in markets?
I think overall, there's not too much difference, right?
Okay.
We also talk about automation. We talk about the potential that it gives. As you said, it can free up time. You get rid of repetitive tasks. You can free up time for more meaningful and more difficult customer conversations. Or even, as you said, you have new ideas what you can do with the people and move them into cross and upsell scenarios and et cetera. So I wouldn't say that also when we look at customers and customers' expectation, self-service is the big thing, and modern self-service is through AI agents. So that's probably very similar. Then, of course, as you mentioned, there is a different level of complexity when it comes to, languages to start with, but also then different cultures and, more like the nuances of how you want to get approached and how a conversation would go, what type of language do you need? I mean, not only the language, but in terms of the tonality of the conversation, there's definitely more differences in a continent like Europe. And then, of course, we are somehow famous for, having good regulation in place, right? That's definitely a big concern of European customers around data privacy and data security. I'm German, I think rightfully though. And this is also something, that we are taking care of, right? And making sure that you have data locality, you have all different measures to make sure your data is safe and secure. So that's perhaps a little bit of a difference. But overall, I would say the overall theme is very similar.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting that, it feels like it feels like where all the technology is going and the announcements and this drive of the evolution is almost, it feels like it's happening on a very much a global scale, and everybody's getting swept along and trying to just keep up.
I think there's more differences when you look in certain industries,
Yeah.
right, and you look into certain segments of the market. Then you will find bigger differences. Yeah. So, regulated industries, for example, versus non-regulated.
Yeah.
Right?
But I think that makes me think about also things about something else that you talked about yesterday, and related to that, and also a conversation, Adrian, that we had. I looked it up. It was 7 years ago. So I want to talk about knowledge, because we were talking. I remember talking to you about this. At the time, it was a new AI-powered knowledge management product, apparently using content queue technology back in 2018. So you were like way ahead of the game, and then you've announced the knowledge kind of builder and the knowledge graph. And I just thought, are they related? Are they just an evolution? Is it just a journey? Because I think that for me, that's one of the biggest sort of things. Is it's people talk about data, but the knowledge and capturing the knowledge and codifying it and organizing it and things is a key part of this whole service sort of domain. Taking it out of tickets, taking it out of articles, taking it out of knowledge, archives and things, and then being able to present it and then use it as a platform to build things on top of. Tell me a bit about the announcements and also that journey and things, because I think it's a really important part that many people forget, because sometimes it's hard work pulling all that sort of stuff together.
Yeah, and that was just for the audience. Content queues was CUES, as in trumps for what content you should build. I think that we've always believed at Zendesk that customer service is a knowledge-driven endeavor, right? You capture and codify knowledge. You're sharing it with your employees, your agents, to make them, inform them, train them, make them consistent. You're sharing it with your customers to help them with self-service and understanding and knowing how to interact with you. I think that to a certain extent, I've sometimes felt like I was proselytizing, out in the knowledge desert sometimes. Like, yeah, knowledge management, whatever, dude, which is fine. And I think we're reaching a point where people have realized, if the AI revolution is the latest industrial revolution, knowledge is the coal. We used to say data is the coal. But then if we go back to content queues, it was built on older technology, right? The joke in artificial intelligence circles is, what is AI? AI is something that doesn't work yet. Things, when they start working, are machine learning, and when they're everywhere, they're an algorithm. Right. I think content queues is now in the algorithm state. Okay. Right. The K-means clustering on vector space indexes, where you look at everything in the articles that you have and everything in the tickets that you've seen and look for gaps. That was a great concept. The tech it worked okay. I wouldn't say it was amazing. I did then, though. I was because I'm paid to do that. But I think if you look at it now, the technology is amazing. Right. It's anything sufficiently advanced is indistinguishable from magic. And I think
Asimov, I think.
Sorry?
Asimov, I think.
Close, Arthur C. Clarke. But
he's one of the two.
Yeah. It was a reasonable guess it'd be one of them. And so I think what's happening here is, you have these algorithms that can, or models, I should say, that can read everything, understand context, have the world knowledge that we talked about, and that can see and generate content and gaps. You can superpower your knowledge efforts. And so it's not necessarily, it doesn't feel like taking your medicine anymore. Like, hey, knowledge center support, getting agents to update articles and write things down. People who had that process down, it really benefited them from an ROI point of view, from a customer experience point of view. I think at this point, the machines can help you with that and do that for you, which is extraordinary. So I'm really excited about, our knowledge builder and some of the things that we've implemented, because I think they're just taking some of the grind out of it. And then humans could never, for a lot of contact centers, no one could read every ticket, retain and figure out the trends and everything else. Models can, and this is so powerful.
I think it's also it's very cost effective, because it's all creating that content and then repurposing it and everything was a huge cost for many service and support and contact centers.
Benefits, but a huge cost.
Yeah, No, absolutely. But it was like that. You had to do the big upfront to actually keep going, and then there's the maintenance of it all, and then if you have to translate it into different languages, and then you're like going new products, new services, and you're like going, oh my god, it's like one of those things. That people are like, oh, we'll do it tomorrow.
Yeah.
We'll do it tomorrow. But particularly the language automation. I was down in the expo area, and I saw how things can get created and then get translated. And like for European customers, they must be going bingo.
Yes, absolutely 100%. And it's not only the translation, but it's also, as Adrian mentioned, the generation itself. So I think the role for the people is changing from writing all the text to basically reviewing, editing, and then approving the text. So it's more like a supervising role, which obviously makes it also so much more effective, and you can handle so much more, exactly like you said, not only in the creation, but then in the translation and maintenance. And then we have all these amazing things where we can look at all the interaction history and figure out if there's any white spaces in there, or if there's anything which basically isn't being really used, so we can get rid of it. So all of these little things, yeah, exactly as you said, make it so much easier. You get so much more productive. So it's a big step.
Yeah, I think it was brilliant, and I love the idea that you've been banging the drum about knowledge-centered service for and possibly out in the wilderness for a while, but actually it's coming back because it's the foundation of it all. But
I think it's coming back partly as well because the ROI is so demonstrable.
Yeah.
Right. You can
completely.
You totally see the benefit and get the benefit and can measure it, which is great.
Somebody said to me, it says like a few weeks ago or so, and they said like data is AI and AI is data, and then I thought, yeah, well, that's pretty straightforward. But it's funny is that sometimes we don't think about knowledge as data, but it is. Sometimes we think about data as like ones and zeros or numbers on a
Structured, not unstructured.
right? And so I think it's really good, and I'm very kind of pleased with that because it actually takes this heavy load where there's benefits for both employees and kind of customers, and it kind of pulls it all together. But within all of this sort of stuff, this feels like it's also where we feel like things are moving so fast. And I go back to some of the stuff, a couple of quotes from yesterday. I mean, Adrian, you talked about, in your session, you quoted Hemingway as saying change happens gradually then all at once, but then you said to me this morning that actually it's more about bankruptcy, but then bankruptcy's been dropped out.
I'm not sure if that's a misquote.
No, fine. But I like it as it stood, as you said it. Change happens gradually, then all at once. But we're approaching this big tipping point where there's going to be massive change, particularly in the service and experience space. But then Trevor Noah, in the conversation that you had with him, had this quite sobering sort of perspective. He says, "Change is great, but changing is tumultuous and terrible." And I thought, oh, that's brilliant. I love that. And I thought I'd just ask you kind of like, given that, what advice do you have for firms and individuals that are looking to navigate this sort of change? I mean, what sort of steps should they be doing or taking, or where should they be starting things?
I think the place to start, in my mind, is what is it that you want to improve, right? Any technology is there, hopefully, to make things better. So if you want to improve the consistency, quality of answer, and just behavior patterns of your customer service agents, right? Then you're going to start with sort of some kind of co-pilot automated assistance implementation, because you're going to have human-driven support and you want to improve that, make it more efficient and consistent. I think when you start there, though, you're immediately going to be faced with the challenge of, I need some knowledge. And then you're going to need to have the knowledge builder create some knowledge, implement, RAG-based search for your users, generative search. And I think, understanding the steps that you're going to go through and the thing that you want to improve, and then how you are going to measure the thing that you're going to improve to make sure it's working and that you can demonstrate that. As in any transformation, I think is important, right? I need to know what my goals are, and I need to know how I'm going to measure my progress towards those goals.
Yeah.
I think we have customers who want to start with automation, right? Ambitious, They're putting forth that automation is the thing that they need. Maybe they're getting bored on management pressure, or they just feel social pressure amongst their, customers, chief customer officer peers to do that. That's also a great approach, but the approach is the same. I think if people stand, in front of the cacophony of noise around generative AI and say, I need to deploy it, and they're looking at this giant amorphous problem, that is daunting, right? To me, that is the pain of changing, right? It's like, I need to adopt this thing, but I don't have a methodology. Back to first principles, we're about democratizing access to the best in technology and the best in CX. And that's why we've tried to put the resolution platform there, have recipes, have steps, and take it forward.
Perhaps to add also to your, to what you said, change is great, but changing could be really terrible experience. So one other advice that I would give is, let me use a customer example on how they did it. So it's a telco company, a good customer of ours from the Nordics. And when they started to implement AI agents, what they did is they were actually working together with the human agents. And we're saying, so what are the top 10 processes that are, high volume, highly repetitive, and basically take a lot of your time that you also want to get rid of, right? Let's define those. Let's see how the process runs, how we can automate it, and then kind of roll it out consistently. And what it did is it not only increased the customer satisfaction, because now I can do it self-service whenever I want, it's super convenient. It also increased employee satisfaction, right? Because the team, was part of the change management, was being asked, and basically it led to the situation, great, now it frees up some time for me. I can really focus on the more, rewarding, perhaps also more difficult, more important conversations with the customers. And I thought this was a very good example, kind of from a change management perspective, to add on what Adrian said, is on how you take the teams with you, because I totally agree with that statement. While it gives you efficiency gains, not necessarily should lead to the situation that you fire all of your team.
Absolutely. I think we're pretty much at the end, kind of there. We're running out of time. I just want to say one final thing. Any final thoughts that you want to leave us with, or shall we just leave it there?
I think the final thought would be, thanks, Adrian. It's good to see you again.
Brilliant. Thank you, Adrian.
Thank you.
Thank you, Matthias.
Thanks a lot.
Well, that's a wrap. Now, it's not often I do a two-parter, so I hope that you enjoyed it. That's all from me today, and I hope you visit the Punk CX podcast again soon. Thanks very much.
Wow, what a great interview. I hope you enjoyed it. I know I did. Find out more about me and the work that I do at adrianswinsko.com. Do leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. And if you have any comments, feedback, or questions about the podcast, then feel free to send me a message to podcast@adrianswinsko.com. And do tune in again. Thanks very much.